Welcome back to the Scattered Sheep Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wade. It is October 16th. For today's episode, we're gonna go back to the recent teachings I did on the NAR and Dominionism and conferred righteousness. So just for background, in case somebody's late to the party, the NAR, New Apostolic Reformation, was founded in the late 90s by C. Peter Wagner, who thought that God was putting the band back together. He was recreating the apostles, and lo and behold, C. Peter Wagner thought he was one of them. So it's always convenient when your theology starts with you like hitting the spiritual lottery. And there were two primary factors involved in his theology that were kind of wackadoodle. One being the recreation of apostolic authority, meaning that pastors were pushed down on the totem pole and that everybody had to now be beholden to the apostles, such as himself. The problem, of course, is that anybody can call themselves an apostle, and they usually just prop each other up. And now it's gotten to the point in 2025 where everybody and their mom is an apostle. So somehow Jenny Weaver became an apostle. She runs and by default, her husband became an apostle. We saw that with Greg Locke, whose adulterous wife Ty lobbied Malachi O'Brien to anoint Greg an apostle. And then because she was married to him, she became an apostle. Jenny Weaver has a school, The Stupid Natural, where if you pay her $1,000 for a year's worth of courses in leadership, in the leadership track, she will name you an apostle. So it gets to the point where it's just a mockery of God. It's a mockery of the original apostles. The second primary characteristic that C. Peter Wagner insisted was part of the NAR was Dominionism, was this notion that in order to facilitate the second coming of Christ, we had to conquer the culture. This became expanded with the Seven Mountains Mandate, Lance Wallnau, Bill Johnson. This notion that we have to basically create a theocracy somehow within this constitutional republic that we live in. Now, the original thesis was that literally Christ could not return until we did this. And that became the focal point of controversy because obviously, you're God in that situation. If Jesus is incapable of coming back until you do something, you're God in that scenario, not Jesus. So over the last, 10 years or so, that notion has kind of been dissipated. I think they still believe it, but they don't sell it because they realize it can't sell. So NAR Dominionism, as I refer to as the last idol of the church age, which I believe it is, has spread like a cancer throughout the body of Christ and the church in this country, to the point that even, I have exchanges on what's supposed to be discernment groups on Facebook, and people cannot see how they've been infected. They can't. They've been taught so poorly to idolize this country, and specifically the Republican Party in this country, that they can't see how their own comments reflect it. They can't see the recent deification of Charlie Kirk as being nothing but idolatry. So within this concept, and I recommend you go listen to the teaching I did, I think a week ago or so, because it goes much more in depth. But one of the main facets we get into is what I call conferred righteousness. And what this means is that as Americans, we're entitled to vote for whoever we want, support whoever we want politically. We should certainly see what the candidates stand for. We should certainly pray and vote as we felt led, or not vote if we feel not to vote. None of that is righteous. But the NAR and the Dominionist camp believe that their side, what they have determined, is the godly side, which is the Republican Party. And what they do is they essentially confer righteousness upon it. They mix the profane with the holy. They call people who don't deserve any sliver of credit for righteousness to be, holy. Unless you think that I'm being hyperbolic, that is how you get the main idol right now is the current president, who is beyond morally suspect. I mean, you're talking about a convicted rapist. You're talking about somebody with 34 felony convictions, 6 bankruptcy, 3 wives, all of which he was unfaithful on. And somehow, Charisma News has claimed that he's the second coming of King Cyrus, the second coming of King Jehu. On Inauguration Day, you had Mark Driscoll, the fugitive from church discipline who stole $200,000 in tithe money to gain the New York Times bestseller list, declaring that Elijah was back in the White House. This is conferred righteousness. What this does is, again, it pretends that because they've made it, and listen, if they make a determination that every single Republican candidate is somehow the lesser of two evils, I'm fine with that. But you lose sight of the fact that you end up defending evil one way or the other. That's just not going to fly when you stand before Christ. It's just not. So I've been making this argument for a very long time. I did a recent sermon review of somebody named Dale Partridge, who had an absolutely horrific call to war, basically, for the church, to war against the very people who need the gospel the most. His insistence was that, basically his side was righteous and the evil lefty Democrats were, satanic. And this kind of conferred righteousness is very dangerous. And it doesn't really get at the heart of the problem of who it is that the current apostate church is in bed with. We talk about this in discernment all the time, like why does somebody who we thought was solid theologically decide to share the stage with somebody who is so clearly not? I remember this all the way back to even when Francis Chan first went off the rails, right? That first happened when he spoke at Mike Bickle conference. And he effused praise upon him and said, I love this man. I love Mike Bickle. And everybody in the discernment sphere was going nuts. They were like, how could you share the stage with somebody who's so blatantly false? Right? We saw this early on with Dr. Michael Brown. Dr. Michael Brown went on Benny Hinn's show for a week. And afterwards, he was nice enough to have me on as a guest on his radio program. And I told him, I'm like, Benny Hinn doesn't deserve to be on the same stage with you. Now, obviously, years later, maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe they do belong together. But he did that for everybody, right? That's why I think I was the first one to call Dr. Brown the gatekeeper of the NAR, because he would provide cover for anybody that Stephen Strang and Charisma News ordered him to. When Jennifer LeClaire was facing the sneaky squid spirit backlash, he had Jennifer on his program and basically whitewashed it. When the Bicklegate story first broke and people were still trying to save Mike Bickle, Charisma News sent Dr. Brown down to IHOP to point his finger at everybody in the audience and say, stay off of social media. Don't be gossiping about this. Yeah, how'd that work out for you? So that same concept of shouldn't we be vaguely concerned about who we're in bed with, who we're conferring righteousness upon? So, I think that, God does some exposing, as he's wanted to do. And this week we saw a very, very horrific story of the dark underbelly of Republican political theology, if you will. There was a report done by Politico that released, I think, 2,900 pages or so of a group chat from young Republicans. And when I say young, I don't mean children, like J.D. Vance is trying to pretend. These are people who ranged in age, I believe, from their young 20s to 40 years old, included a Vermont state senator, included heads of various Republican Party chapters. And we're going to go over that today. So you get a full understanding of who it is that you're in bed with. And before the defense comes up, well, it's not fair, just because there's a group of idiots. They're not just idiots. They were in major leadership positions within the Republican Party with eyes toward being the next generation of Republican leaders. And it reveals what has been fed to them, what has been taught to them, not only by the Republican Party, but by the church. And that should give everybody pause. And before you start, again, trying to blow it off like, oh, this is just like, like a small group of people. This is exactly the same thing that people like Dale Partridge did in his horrible sermon. After the Kirk assassination, he scoured social media and he found a few, idiotic, stupid, disgusting tweets or posts from people who claimed to be on the left and made very vile, disgusting posts about Charlie Kirk, about the assassination. They were absolutely wrong. But Dale Partridge extrapolated that out to anybody on the left, 50% of the country, based upon a handful of tweets that he was able to scour from the internet. And I said in my review of the sermon that was incredibly irresponsible and wrong. Those were just random people. These people, again, are in leadership positions. They were counsels for local Republican groups. They were direct aides to politicians. And like I said, one was a state politician themselves. And so I think it's important to understand what we're dealing with. We're going to go over the Politico article. And I want you to keep in mind, as we're discussing this and reading this, that this is who the church is in bed with. And that sound that you hear from the extreme NAR Dominionist camp is crickets, because nobody's addressed it that I could find. I went to Shane Idleman's page, Mario Murillo, Greg Locke, Jenny Weaver, Dr. Michael Brown. Nobody has said anything about this. Could you imagine if somebody on the left had done a fraction of this? It would be the lead story on Charisma News. But now, let's just keep quiet and hope that nobody notices that we are in bed with racist anti-Semites. And keep in mind, this story is 100% verified. Leaders of the young Republican groups throughout the country worried that what would happen if their Telegram chat ever got leaked, but they kept typing anyway. They referred to black people as monkeys and the watermelon people, and they mused about putting their political opponents into gas chambers. They talked about raping their enemies and driving them to suicide, and lauded Republicans who they believed supported slavery. William Hendricks, the Kansas Young Republicans vice chair, used the words the N-word and variations of the N-word more than a dozen times in the chat. Bobby Walker, the vice chair of the New York State Republicans at the time, referred to rape as epic. Peter Ginter, who at the time was chair of the same organization, wrote in the message sent in June that everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber. Ginter was referring to an upcoming vote on whether he should become chair of the Young Republican National Federation, the GOP's 15,000-member political organization for Republicans between 18 and 40 years old. So he said, vote against them, they need to go to the gas chamber. I'm going to create some of the greatest psychological torture methods known to man. We only want true believers, he continued. 2 members of the chat responded. This is the chat. Everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber, and everyone that endorsed but then votes for us is going to the gas chamber. When do we start bullying, dude? We have a solid 3 people who can probably have them want to jump. If they vote for us, why would they be gassed? When do they bring that side out? I'm going to create some of the greatest psychological torture known to man. We only want true believers. Can we fix the showers? Gas chambers don't fit the Hitler aesthetic. I'm ready to watch people burn now. We got to pretend that we like them. Hey, come on in. Take a nice shower and relax. Boom, they're dead. Can we fix the showers? Gas chambers don't fit the Hitler aesthetic. Joe Maligno, who previously identified himself as the general counsel for the New York State Republicans, wrote back, "I'm ready to watch people burn now," Annie Kakati, New York's national committee member, said. The exchange is part of a trove of Telegram chats obtained by Politico, spanning more than 7 months of messages from young Republican leaders in New York, Kansas, Arizona, and Vermont. The chat offers unfiltered look at how the new generation of GOP activists talk when they think no one is listening. Since Politico began making inquiries, one member of the group chat is no longer employed at their job, and another job offer was rescinded. Prominent New York Republicans, including Representative Elise Stefanik and State Senate Minority Leader Robert Ortt, have denounced the chat. Do you think? And festering resentments among young Republicans have now turned into public recriminations, including allegations of character assassination and extortion. The 2,900 pages of chat shared among a dozen millennial and Gen Z Republicans between early January to mid-August chronicle their campaign to seize control of the National Republican Organization on a hardline pro-Donald Trump platform. Many of the chat members already work inside the government or party politics, and one serves as a state senator. Together, the messages reveal a culture where racist, anti-Semitic, and violent rhetoric circulate freely, and where the Trump-era loosening of political norms has made such talk feel less taboo among those positioning themselves as the party's next leaders. The more the political atmosphere is opening and liberating, like it has been with the emergence of Trump and a more right-wing GOP even before him, it opens up young people and older people to telling racist jokes, making racist commentaries in private and public, said Joe Fegan, a Texas A&M sociology professor who has studied racism for the last 60 years. He's also concerned that the words would be applied to public policy. It's chilling, of course, because they will act on these views. The dynamic of easy racism and casual cruelty played out often dark, vivid fashion inside of chats where campaign talk and party gossip blurred into the streams of slurs and violent fantasies. This is the Peter Ginter guy that we talked about. The group chat members spoke freely about the pressure to cow to Trump and avoid being called a rhino, the love of Nazis within their party's right wing, and the president's alleged work to suppress documents related to a wealthy financier, Jeffrey Epstein's child sex crimes. Trump's too busy burning the Epstein files, Alex Dwyer, the chair of the Kansas Young Republicans, wrote in one instance. Dwyer and Kay Caddy declined to comment. Maligno and Hendricks did not return requests for comment, but some involved in the chat did respond publicly. Ginter claimed the release of the chat is part of a highly coordinated year-long character assassination by Gavin Wax and the New York City Young Republican Club, an allusion to once obscured internecine war that has now spilled into the open. So you can't even, you're busted, right? These are your words. And you want to pretend it's a highly coordinated character assassination that you tweeted or texted that you love Hitler. These logs were sourced in a way of extortion to provide to Politico by this very same people conspiring against me. What's the most disheartening is that despite my unwavering support of Donald Trump since 2016, rogue members of his administration, including Gavin Wax, have participated in this conspiracy to ruin me publicly simply because I challenged them privately. No, because you were a racist, you were an anti-Semite, and you were busted for it. Wax, a staffer in Trump's State Department, formerly led the New York Young Republican Club, a separate city-based group that's at odds with the state organization and New York State Young Republicans. He declined to comment. Despite his allusions to infighting, Ginter still apologized. I'm so sorry to those offended by the insensitive and inexcusable language found within the more than 28,000 messages of a private group chat that I created during my campaign to lead the Young Republicans. While I take complete responsibility, I have had no way of verifying their accuracy, and I'm deeply concerned that the message logs in question may have been deceptively doctored. Please, just go away. At least one person in the Telegram chat works in the Trump administration, Michael Bartels, who, according to his LinkedIn account, serves as a senior advisor in the Office of General Counsel within the U.S. Small Business Administration. Bartels did not have much to say in the chat, but he didn't offer any pushback against the offensive rhetoric in it either. He declined to comment. A notarized affidavit signed by Bartels and obtained by Politico also sheds light on the intra-party rivalry that led to the War Room Telegram chat to be made public. Bartels references Wax as well. He wrote that he did not give Politico the chat and that Wax demanded in a phone call that he provide the full chat log. When I attempted to resist that demand after providing some of the requested information, Wax threatened my professional standing and raised the possibility of potential legal action related to an alleged breach of non-disclosure agreements. My position within the New York Young Republican Club was directly threatened. Walker, who now leads New York State Young Republicans, touched on a similar theme, saying that he believes portions of the chat may have been altered, taken out of context. Again, there's no context in which these comments should be acceptable to human beings, let alone Christians. But he also apologized. There's no excuse for the language and tone of the messages attributed to me. The language is wrong and hurtful, and I sincerely apologize, Walker said. This has been a painful lesson about judgment and trust, and I am committed to moving forward with greater care, respect, and accountability in everything I say and do. Too late. What you're basically saying there is, I got caught, so I apologize, but I'll be more careful in the future so you don't actually see what I believe. These represent what they believe. Mixed into formal conversations about whipping votes, social media strategy, and logistics, the members of the chat slung around an array of slurs, which Politico is republishing to show how they spoke. Epithets such as faggot, retarded, the N-word appeared 251 times. In one instance, Walker, who at a time was a staffer for Ort, talked about how a mutual friend of some in the chat dated this very obese Indian woman for a period of time. Ginta responded the woman was not Indian. She just didn't bathe often. That came from Samuel Douglas, a state senator from northern Vermont, as the head of the state's Young Republicans. In a separate conversation, Ginta shared that his flight to Charleston, South Carolina landed safely. Then he offered some advice for his fellow Republicans. If your pilot is a she and she looks 10 shades darker than someone from Sicily, just end it there. Scream the no word, Ginta wrote. Douglas did not respond for requests to comment. In a statement, Ort called for the members of the chat to resign. I was shocked and disgusted to learn about the racist, anti-Semitic, misogynistic comments attributed to members of the New York State Young Republicans. This behavior is indefensible and has no place in our party or anywhere in public life. So, of course, the people who were not necessarily in this chat but probably basically agree with everything they said are going to chuck these guys under the bus because it's just too late for them. Walker had been in line to manage Republican Peter Orbach's campaign for Congress in upstate New York, but a spokesman for the campaign said Walker won't be brought on in light of the comments in the chat. The private rhetoric isn't happening in a vacuum. It comes amid a widespread coarsening of the broader political discourse, and as incendiary and racially offensive tropes from the right become increasingly common in public debate. Last month, Trump posted an artificial intelligence-generated video that showed House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in a sombrero beside Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who fabricated remarks were about trading free health care for immigrant votes, a false, long-running GOP trope. The sombrero meme has been widely used to mock Democrats as the government shutdown wears on. In his 2024 campaign, Trump spread false reports of Haitian migrants eating pets, which, by the way, the majority of those Haitians are your brothers and sisters in Christ. It wasn't even vaguely funny. And one of his rallies welcomed comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage and joked about black people carving watermelons on Halloween. This stuff has become mainstream now. And hopefully these revelations of what these guys were saying will hopefully make some people realize that they shouldn't be in bed with these people. Liz Houston, a White House spokesperson, rejected the idea that Trump's rhetoric had anything to do with the chat members' language. Gee. Only an activist left-wing reporter would desperately try to tie President Trump into a story about a random group chat he has no affiliation with. That's not true. He is the head of the Republican Party. All of these people work for the Republican Party. He is directly affiliated with it. While failing to mention the dangerous smears coming from Democrat politicians who have fantasized about murdering their opponent and called Republicans Nazis and fascists, No one has been subjected to more vicious rhetoric and violence than President Trump. Please spare me the pearl clutching. In the War Room chat, Ginta tells his fellow Republicans that he spoke with the White House about an endorsement from Trump for his bid to become the chairman of the National Federation. Trump and the Republican National Committee ultimately decided to stay neutral in the race. But Ginta was able to contact the Trump administration. A White House official said that no affiliation to the group, that hundreds of groups asked the White House for its endorsement. Very possible. Ginta was most prominent voice in the chat, spreading racist messages often encouraged or liked by other members. When Luke Mosiman, the chair of the Arizona Young Republicans, asked if New Yorkers in the chat were watching an NBA game, Ginta responded, "I'd go to the zoo if I wanted to watch monkeys play ball." Because, Jesus. Ginta elsewhere refers to black people as the watermelon people. Hendricks made a remark in July. Bro was at a chicken restaurant ordering his food. Would you like some watermelons and Kool-Aid with that? I apologize to our African-American brothers and sisters who the Bible says that the people in the world will know us by our love for each other. There's obviously no love here. Hendricks was a communications assistant for Kansas Republican Attorney General Chris Kobach until Thursday. He also said in a chat that despite political differences, he's drawn to Missouri's young Republican organization because Missouri doesn't like faggots. Politico reached out to Danedry Herbert, a spokesperson for the Attorney General who serves as Kansas GOP chair, and shared with her excerpts of the chat involving Hendricks. In response, Herbert said that we are aware of the issues raised and Hendricks is no longer employed in Kobach's office. This is the exchange in question. Yeah, I had some back and forth with the VC in Michigan. Current chair is a deer in the headlights. We have a call on Wednesday. Many agree. He did say, my delegates, I will bring vote for the most right-wing person. Great. I love Hitler. In another exchange, Dwyer, the Kansas chair, informs Ginta that one of the Michigan's young Republicans promised him the group will vote for the most right-wing person, and Ginta responded, great, I love Hitler. Dwyer reacted with a smiley face. Ginta, who serves as the chief of staff to New York State Assemblyman Mike Riley, ultimately fell 6 points short of winning the chairmanship and to lead the Young Republican National Federation earlier this year, despite earning endorsements from Stefanik and longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone. Riley did not respond for requests to comment. Earlier this year, Stefanik accepted an award from the New York State Young Republicans. She lauded Ginta for his tremendous leadership in August and had her campaign and the political action committee she leads donate to that state organization. Alex DeGrasse, a senior advisor for Stefanik, said the Congresswoman was absolutely appalled to learn about the alleged comments made by leaders of the New York State Republicans. Does anybody buy that? Do you think these people would be spewing this vile bile for 7 months and in public they said nothing to the other people that are within their political sphere? That just defies belief. According to the description provided by Politico, comments were heinous, anti-Semitic, racist, and unacceptable. Noting Stefanik has never employed anyone in the chat. If the description by Politico is accurate, Congresswoman Stefanik calls for any New York Young Republicans responsible for these horrific comments in this chat to step down immediately. Stone also condemned the comments in a statement. I, of course, have never seen this alleged chat room thread. Whatever. If it's authentic, it's authentic already. Stop trying to spread the possibility that it's fake. I would, of course, denounce any such comments in the strongest possible terms. This would surprise me as it is inconsistent with Peter that I know. Only I know him in the capacity as the head of the New York State Republicans, where I thought he did a good job. It's just not believable that you don't know who he is. Few minority groups are spared from the Young Republicans group chat. Their rhetoric, normalized at most points as dark humor, mirrors some popular conservative political commentators, podcasters, and comedians amid a national erosion of what's considered acceptable discourse. Ginta's line on a darker-skinned pilot, for example, echoes one used by slain conservative activist Charlie Kirk last year when he said, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified, when he was discussing how diversity hiring invites unwholesome thinking. Walker also uses the moniker Eye Patch McCain, originally coined by conservative commentator Tucker Carlson, in an apparent reference to GOP Rep. Dan Crenshaw, who lost his eye while serving as a Navy SEAL in Afghanistan. Walker also makes the remark, "I prefer my war heroes not captured," which repeats a similar 2015 line from Trump. Art Gibson, the professor of University of Dayton who specializes in white racial extremism, surmised the young Republicans in the chat were influenced by Trump's language, which he said is often hyperbolic and emotionally charged. Trump's persistent use of hostile, often inflammatory language that normalizes aggressive discourse in conservative circles can be incredibly influential on young operatives who are still trying to figure out what is that political discourse. Gibson reviewed multiple excerpts of the Young Republicans chat provided by Politico. One of the late July messages where Moseman, the chair of the Arizona Young Republicans, mused about how the group could win support for their preferred candidate by linking the opponent to white supremacist groups. But Moseman then realized the plan could backfire. Kansas's young Republicans can end up being attracted to that opponent. Can we get them to start releasing Nazi edits with her like pro-Nazi and fascism propaganda, he asked the group. "Oh my God, I love this plan," Rachel Hope of the young Arizona Young Republicans chair responded. "The only problem is we'll lose the Kansas delegation," Moseman said. Hope and the two young Kansas Republicans in the chat reacted with a laughing face to the message. Hope did not respond for requests for comment. Moseman declined to comment. Gibson said the young Republicans' conversations reminded him of the online discussions between members of the neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups. You say it only once or twice, it's a joke, but you say it 251 times, it's no longer a joke. The more we repeat certain ideas, the more real they become to us. Weeks later said, someone in the chat staying in a hotel asked its members, guess what room we're in? 1488, Dwyer responds. White supremacists use the number 1488 because 14 is the number of words in the white supremacist slogan, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. H is the eighth letter in the alphabet, and 88 is used as a shorthand for Heil Hitler. In other conversations in February, Ginta talks approvingly about the Orange County Teenage Republican Organization in New York, which appears to be part of the network of national teenage Republicans, and how he was pleased with its young members' ideological bent. They support slavery and all that shit. Pardon my language. Mega-based. He said the term "based" is internet culture is used to express approval with an idea, often one that's bold or controversial. In a statement, Orange County GOP Chair Courtney Canfield Green said that the party was disappointed to learn its teen group is mentioned in the chat. Our teen volunteers have no affiliation with this group, she said. The behavior has no home in the Republican Party in Orange County. Sure it doesn't. Ed Cox, the chair of the New York State GOP, also condemned the remarks made in the chat. I was shocked and disgusted to learn of the reports of comments made by a small group of young Republicans. Just as we call out vile racist and anti-Semitic rhetoric on the far left, we must not tolerate it within our own ranks. Members of the Telegram chat speak about their personal lives, too. Extensive discussions about their everyday lives include one exchange about how devotedly Catholic some chat members are, how often they attend church. Many of the slurs, epithets, and violent language used in the chat often appeared to be intended as jokes. Moseman derided the members in the chat as Beaner and Spick, which is a Hispanic slur. Stay in the closet, faggot, Walker said of New York, who also jested in July. The group used slurs against Asians. My people built the tracks with the Chinese, Walker says at one point, referring to his Italian ancestors. Let his people go, Maligno responds. Keep the chinks, though. In another incident, Moseman tells the group the Spanish came to America and had sex with every woman. Dwyer writes, sex is gay. Moseman replies, sex? It was rape. Walker says, epic. There's more explicit malice in some phrases, too, especially when they turn their ire on opponents outside the chat, such as the leader of the rival GROW-YR, Young Republican Slate, Hayden Paget, who defeated Ginta and was reelected chairman of the Young Republican National Federation this summer. You mean Hayden Faggot wrote the resolution himself, Ginta said. Moseman declared the following month, rape Hayden. Adolf Paget is I hate to have to keep saying this, is in the faggot bunker as we speak, Walker said. Padgett responded to the chat's language in a statement. The Young Republican Federation condemns all forms of racism, anti-Semitism, and hate. I want to be clear, such behavior is entirely inconsistent with our values, and it's no place within our organization or the broader conservative movement. Ginta also had expletive-laden criticism for young Republicans in the states that were supporting or leaning toward Padgett's faction. Minnesota faggots, he messaged, continue. Arkansas inbred cow effers, Nebraska, revolt in our favor, block their bind, and have a majority of their delegates in Maryland. Fat, stinky Jew. Rhode Island traitorous C-word, who I will eradicate from the face of this planet. Ginta also planned to make one of the competing young Republicans unalive himself on the convention floor. It means kill himself. Another instance, Douglas, the Vermont state senator, describes to the group members how one of Padgett's Jewish colleagues may have made a procedural error related to the number of Maryland delegates permitted in the national convention. I was about to say, you're giving nationals too much credit and expecting the Jew to be honest. Breanna Douglas, Sam's wife and Vermont Young Republicans National Committee member, replied to her husband's message. Breanna Douglas did not respond for comment. While reporting this article, Politico was examining a separate allegation that Ginta and the Young Republicans mismanaged the New York organization's finances and hadn't paid for at least one venue for a swanky holiday party it hosted last year. Politico reported a report detailed how the organization was missing required financial disclosure forms and how their subsequent efforts to file the forms revealed the organization was in more than $28,000 of debt. As of Tuesday, updated records show the organization is in more than for $38,000 worth of debt. Donations to New York State Republicans' political account must be reported to the New York State Board of Elections. Expenditures must be reported too. At the time, Ginta told Politico the allegations were nothing more than a sad and pathetic attempt at a political hit job. But in the chat, he and Walker speak flippantly about mishandling the club's finances. The account be like $500, balding cream, $1,000, Ozempic. I'm sorry, $500 for the balding cream and $1,000 for Ozempic, Walker said in one message. We will be declaring bankruptcy after this, I just know it. I drained $10,000 tonight to pay for my next vacation in Italy, Ginta appeared to joke about the organization's bank account. I spent it on massage, he says, of another check that was deposited in the account. Great, can't wait to get sued by our venue, Walker replies. Members of the chat appeared to be aware of its toxicity, and even made remarks that considered the possibility of someone outside their tight-knit group can view it. Walker seemed to consider that possibility the most. In one instance, he joked about bombing the Young Republican National Federation's convention in Nashville, then remarked, just kidding for our assigned FBI tracker. In another, he considered the totality of the 1,000 of messages that he and his peers had written and what would happen if the public saw them. If we ever had this leak of this chat, we would be cooked for real, for real. I understand that, politics is a disgustingly dirty profession. I understand that there's a lot of vile hatred in this country. And I understand that it's not beholden to one political party. This video is not about politics. It's about the church. It's about who the church has chosen to get into bed with. And for lack of a better analogy, when you get into bed with a whore, don't be surprised when she charges you. Because now the bill is coming due. These people are not a microcosm. They are the Republican Party. They are espousing, maybe more on the extreme side, but they are espousing essentially what's being espoused by people in broad daylight. And the church just turns a blind eye to it. And they say, I don't care. And that's the Faustian bargain I've been speaking about in relation to the NAR Dominionist Church that they've been making for a very long time. And I've said this before, in 2012, I think God tested the church. He gave us a choice in this country between an uber liberal Christian, Barack Obama, and you can hate him all you like, but he was a Christian. He attended a Christian church. He's been Christian his entire life. Granted, progressive and on the liberal side. And the other choice was a member of a satanic cult. And as nice as Mitt Romney seems to be as a fella, he is a member of a satanic cult. That's what Mormonism is. Mormonism was found, I should do a teaching on Mormonism, was founded in the 1800s, in case you don't know, by a pedophile who had 33 wives. The youngest, I believe, was 14, named Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith did not come from the promised land. He came from upstate New York. He claimed when he was walking in the woods behind his house, an angel led him to golden tablets upon writ was a new gospel, which became Pearl of Great Price in the Book of Mormon, which are elevated above Scripture in the Mormon Church. There's a specific verse in the Bible that says, even if an angel should give you a different gospel than what we have given you, call him accursed. I believe one of the main reasons God included that in his word was specifically about Joseph Smith, because he claimed an angel gave him a different gospel. I don't even have to get into the weirdness of Mormonism, the magical underpants, the ability to, eventually own your own planet, that God is essentially a space alien, that you can rise to godlike status in death, that women will be perpetually birthing spirit babies after they die. I mean, there's a lot of weird and wacky stuff that goes into this incredibly satanic false theology. And before you just say, you think to yourself, well, Mitt Romney was, so who cares if he was Mormon? He was a direct descendant of one of the 12 founding members of Mormonism. He tithed 25% of his vast wealth to the Mormon Church. If he was elected president, our government right now would be fully stacked with Mormons. And you might think that's fine. I mean, but coming from, people who believe in dominionism, I found it very odd at best. So in 2012, or I guess it was 2011, Franklin Graham, who cosplays as a Christian and is nothing more than a political operative at this point, he removed Mormonism from the list of cults in the Billy Graham Association on their website because he implored the church to vote for the Mormon. And God said, how do I top that? Because obviously the church didn't get the message, right? How do I top that? And in 2016, the candidate was Donald Trump. And Franklin Graham, after Trump donated 6 figures to both of his charities, which paid him over $1 million in salary per year, bridged the gap between Trump and the evangelical church. And this has led, from 2016 through today, to the absolute idolization of Mr. Trump. And this is not, again, if you do your research and you do your prayer and you come up with him being the lesser of two evils, that's what makes this country great, because you get to choose who you get to vote for. You don't get to, however, confer righteousness upon him. You don't get to pretend he's God's choice. God raises up all leaders, which means currently Donald Trump is his choice. Before that, Joe Biden was his choice. Before that, Donald Trump was his choice. Before that, Barack Obama was his choice. One is no better or righteous than the other. They're all sinful men who fall short of the glory of God. And what you pursue electorally, legislatively, because you focus on two wedge issues, you allow all the other stuff that's against the Bible that they represent to come into play. The impoverishing of the poor, the mistreatment of the stranger, the refusal to take care of widows and orphans, which, by the way, is the number one topic in the Bible after salvation. This is not an endorsement for the other side. Like I always say, neither party in this country cares about the cause of Jesus Christ, but one pretends to. And that's the problem. Because then we climb into bed with them, and we confer all of our righteousness to them, and we call them holy. And at the end of the day, this is what happens. God exposes what is the pure, vile hatred for other people that they hold. Our black brothers and sisters, our Haitian brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters. I use the example all the time. In the late 1990s, the moral majority and the up-and-coming Dominionist church went on a relentless campaign against Bill Clinton and his sexual escapades in the Oval Office. The mantra was character counts. The character should count. But it doesn't count anymore. Now we hear instead, well, I'm not electing a pastor-in-chief. At the time, in the late 90s, there was 3 political figures on the Republican side that were champions against the immorality of Bill Clinton. And you couldn't turn on the TV without watching one of these 3 wax moralistically against Bill Clinton and the Democratic Party. They were Newt Gingrich, Bob Livingston, and Dennis Hastert. With the benefit of hindsight, 5 years later, we now know, or we knew, I should say, in like 2005, we certainly know now, that at the same time Newt Gingrich was pointing his bony finger into the camera, he was having an affair on his wife with a woman half his age who he would divorce his wife to marry. Bob Livingston had so many affairs, the GOP kicked him out of the party, which would never happen today. And Dennis Hastert, he was molesting little boys. That's what happens when you confer righteousness where it doesn't belong. This is what happens when you confer righteousness where it doesn't belong. And here's the punchline for everybody who claims the mantle of Jesus Christ. What do you think this does to our witness for the lost? What do you think this... 40 million people have left the church in the last 25 years. Why do you think they are leaving? Because if you ask them, the vast majority say they can't stand the hypocrisy of Christians. This is that hypocrisy in action. Because even now, crickets, all the Dominionists, where are you, Shane Idleman? Where are you, Murillo? Where are you, Greg Locke? Why have you not come out and denounced this? Oh, because they play on your team, right? And you spent all your energy conferring righteousness upon them. So now you're stuck and you can't come out and tell the truth for Christ. Shane Idleman like was posting memes about a J6 patriot who actually beat up police officers with flagpoles. And he defended him because he was on his team. These people are not on Christ's team. And when I say these people, I don't mean these Republicans. I mean the useful idiots in the NAR pulpits who have been so deceived over the last decade that they can't see any. That's my John Cena, by the way. They can't see anymore their own hypocrisy and the damage they do every day to the witness for Jesus Christ and his gospel. They're like Lot. They've pitched their tent towards Sodom. They want to revive Sodom. But you can't revive what was never alive. They have fallen for the NAR Dominionist lie that recreates American history. I used to teach American history. So if you come at me, you better be prepared, and not with talking points. If you understand who the people were that founded this country, you know it is absurd to think they wanted to form a theocracy. Absurd. There were plenty of people, plenty of the leaders back then, not plenty, but certainly some, that would be sitting next to us today in evangelical churches, John Adams being number one on the list. He was the second president. First president was a third-degree Mason. Third president rewrote the Bible to remove all references to Christ's deity and all of his miracles because he did not believe he was the Son of God. So don't rewrite history and think that somehow now we have to revive the culture. This culture is dying. All cultures that read the Bible, read Revelation. The end times promises a great apostasy, not a great revival. And these people are leading that apostasy. So I thought this was an important enough moment, specifically because of the silence. I'll be honest, if Shane or Mario or any of these dominionists had come out and at least denounced this and really took a hard look at what they were doing, I would praise them. But instead, it's let's do more posts about Charlie Kirk's birthday. Let's not talk about this because this reveals who we've been supporting in the name of Jesus Christ. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments in the comment section. Give it a thumbs up, ring the bell. Share the video. We have surpassed 300 subscribers in 6 months. I will take that as a positive. If I was really deeply embedded in the NAR, I probably would say that's a sign of God's blessing. Yeah. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't worry about that because God's word does not return void. So God makes sure that his word reaches who he intends it to reach. But thank you for those who have joined and subscribe and follow. I know that we may not always agree on everything, and that's okay. But really think hard. Sometimes I hear from folks who follow me, who I talk to, who I respect, and there's still sometimes this undercurrent of, when he talks about Trump or he talks about the Republican Party or something like that. I don't necessarily agree with that. And it's from a Christian standpoint, not a political standpoint, that's part of the NAR teaching that has infected the church. Because when we go to our local churches and we hear this stuff, it forms our theology. And unfortunately, in this tribalism culture that we live in, we are convinced that there's only two sides. We can get 31 flavors of ice cream in this country, 2 coherent political streams of thought, and that's ridiculous. So automatically, if somebody says something critical of one side, they must be somehow defending the other side. I'm on neither side. I've never been a registered anything. There are candidates on both sides I would vote for. There are times when I feel the voting is not appropriate because the lesser of two evils at the end of the day is still evil. The tribe I belong to is heaven, hopefully. Right? We're supposed to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. The Bible says we are to be pilgrims and sojourners through this land. It says we're citizens of heaven, and here's a bad piece of news for dominionists. God does not accept dual citizenship. He does not. I hope this story wakes some people up to look over and see who they're lying in bed with. Thanks as always. Test everything and hold fast.